Good morning. Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Tēnā koutou nā manahiri, no mai, hire mai. Hire mai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Getting good. Welcome to all from near and far. And if you're visiting us via live stream, don't get too discouraged. This is our first time with it. There are a couple bugs we haven't totally worked out yet, but try to hang in there with us, and we'll keep working on it. Last night, we held our annual quiz night. My wife and partner in mastering trivia, Rachel, reprised her capricious and demanding pre-pandemic role as your quiz Ms. I again served my mistress as her lovely assistant to dutifully hand out the lavish prizes to the winning teams. This year I thought I could be more than just another pretty face. It is time for me to take my place in the sun. I'm framing this morning's worship as Quiz Night Redux, the Hamlet edition. To win, you must to thine own self be true. Well, I love Shakespeare's works. It has been a long time since I completed 2 papers on his works at university. So I thought it would be only fair for all of us together to brush up our Shakespeare to make all the stage level for us who are merely players. So I'm going to play for you, hopefully. Something to help you with that. Except nothing's happening. Why not? Oh, no, this has got to work. Hang on. Projector. Well, you can all go home. We'll do this. Yeah. Well, maybe you can at least hear it. don't know what's going on here. It's going to curtail a number of things today. That's good use of the time. Okay. Well, we have just a second. If I can figure out how at least to play the music, even if you can't see the picture. All right. Life is sometimes like this. So Paul's going to sing for you a different song while I play around with this. What I was going to play was, and how many of you know it or have heard of it, Brush Up Your Shakespeare. No? Those who do know it, who wrote it? Huh? Huh? Give her a balloon. And but it was written by Cole Porter. Yes. And it's based on what Shakespearean play? Aren't you erudite this morning, Leo? That's right. It's Taming of the Shrew. I don't seem to have any Wi-Fi connection. That would. It says I do, but.
It haven't made any difference to the audio visual system.
Well, care to sing?
Yeah. This isn't by Cole Porter. It's by a man called Alan McNaughton, who's Scottish. So he wrote this song in Scottish, which would be it's fairly hard to understand if you're not Scottish. But fortunately, it's been translated into English. And when I saw Hamlet in the title for today's sermon, I thought, well, I've got this song if you want it. And I didn't undermine that so that I could sing it. Honestly. There was this king sitting in his garden, all alone, when his brother in his ear poured a little bit of henbane, stole his brother's crown, his money and his widow. But the old king woke and got his son and said, "Now listen, kiddo, I've been killed and it's your duty to take revenge on Claudius. Kill it quick and clean and show the nation what a fraud he is." The kid says, "Right, I'll do it, but I laugh and play crafty so that no one will suspect me. I'll crack on that I'm daddy." So, with all except a ratio, who counts him as a friend? Hamlet, that's the kid's on his round the bend, and because he wasn't ready for obligatory killing, he tries to make the king think that he's tuppence off the shilling. Takes a rise out of Polonius, treats poor Ophelia vile, tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that Denmark's bleeding vile. Then a group of travelling actors like 784 arrive to do a special one-night gig in Elsinore. Hamlet, Hamlet loves his mammy. Hamlet, Hamlet acting balmy. Hamlet, Hamlet hesitating, wonders if the ghosts are cheating. That is why he's waiting. So Hamlet writes this scene for his players to enact. So's Horatio went in and watched to see if Claudia's cracked. Well, the play was called The Mousetrap, not the one that's running now. Sure enough, the king walks out before the final bout. So now Hamlet's got the proof that Claudius gave his dad the dose. The only problem being, well now, Claudius knows he knows. So Hamlet tells his mother her new husband's not a fit one, until Claude puts out a contract with the English king as hitman. So when Hamlet kills Claudius, like opus dilecti was the king's excuse to send him for an English hempen necktie with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to make quite sure he gets there. But Hamlet jumps the bolt, then puts the finger straight on that hair. When Laertes heard his dad had been stabbed by the arrows, he came running back to Elsinore to sweet hot foot from Paris. And Ophelia with her dad killed by the man she was to marry. After saying it with flowers, she committed Harry. Hamlet, Hamlet, no messin'. Hamlet, Hamlet, learned his lesson. Hamlet, Hamlet, Yorick's crust convinced him that men good or bad at last must come to dust. Then Laertes lost his place and was demanding retribution, so the king said, keep your head, I'll provide you a solution. So he arranged a sword fight for the interested parties, with a blunted sword for Hamlet and a sharp sword for Laertes. It's a horrible rhyme, that. To make double sure the old belt and braces line, he'd arranged a poisoned sword tip and a poisoned cup of wine. Well, the poisoned sword got Hamlet, but Laertes went off because he got stabbed himself and then confessed before he snuffed it. When Hamlet's mother drank the wine, as her face turned blue, Hamlet says, I believe that king's a baddie through and through. Incestuous, murderous, damned day, he said, to be precise. Then made up for hesitating once by killing Claudius twice, because he stabbed him with the knife, then forced the wine between his lips. Hamlet says, the rest is silence. That was Hamlet and his chips. They fired a volley over him that shook the topmost rafter, then fought in brass, knee-deep in Danes, lived happy ever after. Hamlet, Hamlet, all that gory. Hamlet, Hamlet, end of story. Hamlet, Hamlet, I'm on my way. If you thought that was boring, you should read the bloody play.
Well, that concludes our service. This fire is a reminder of what is true within us all. The yearning to live freely, the longing for self-knowledge, the flame of intuition, the torch of conscience. We dedicate this service to our being. Please join me in our covenant and your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is the sacraments, and service is the prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our Please stand if able to sing Spirit of Life. I'd now like to invite those who would like to come up for Time for All Ages. Sadly, you all aren't going to get to see the pictures today, but they can. Good morning. Good morning. Well, did you have a good time last night? Yeah. Yeah? Yeah? Did you dream of winning? No? Huh? Well, the title of today's story is called Happy Dreamer. Any happy dreamers here? You don't dream? How about daydream? Do you daydream? Only in school. An honest man. Yeah. What do you dream for yourself? What do you think about your future? What do you?
When he's at school and he's dreaming he wasn't at school.
Yeah. Now let's speak for ourselves. What do you dream of? You going to be a circus performer? No? What are you going to be? Oops. A sore nose? How about you, Clayton?
I have no idea.
That's a good answer.
I want to go to college.
College? That's generally the end of life after that. Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, here's the picture, okay? I'm a happy dreamer. I'm really good at dreaming. Daydreams, big dreams, little dreams, creative dreams. He's a dreamer maximus. Sometimes the world tells me, sit still, be quiet. That ever happened to you, Clayton? Maybe. Or sometimes the world says, pay attention, focus. Wish you could hear inside my head trumpety, zigzag jazz. Wish you could hear, oops, why does it keep doing that? Sometimes I'm a swing high dreamer, way up high, beyond the clouds, so high I can touch the sky. I can also be a loud dreamer. Hello, world! I'm a shout at the top of my lungs dreamer, even if I'm just a loud, inside my head dreamer. Small print for an old man here. Sometimes I'm a colorful dreamer, painting my own path, full of surprises at every turn. I can dream even when the lights are out, all circuits on, fireworks. I light up. I'm all ears. I'm all ears, eyes, heart, and mind. Those are the moments I feel alone, boxed in. And yet I always find a way back, plunging into amazing, delightful, happy dreams. Oh, that's easier to read. I'm really good at being me, a dreamer, surprising, caring, funny, gentle, smart, and when I tumble back to earth, I know I'm okay. Dreamers have a way of bouncing back and moving forward. Various ways. Can't read them all. Sometimes you're ice cream happy, sunshine happy, make a difference happy, Nap happy, that's mine. Music happy, dance happy, peaceful happy, care happy, kindness happy, awe happy, silly happy, foot stopping happy, small print, sorry. Winged dreamer, royal dreamer, thinking dreamer, sweet dreamer, sunny dreamer, floating dreamer, love dreamer, wild dreamer, crazy dreamer, power dreamer, civic dreamer, secret dreamer. But the best way to be a happy dreamer, just be you, which is why this book is dedicated, yes, to you. Okay? So that's your job in life, dream. Think you can do that? So do you have any joys or concerns? You must have a joy. The food truck. Yeah. Okay. Then I guess we'll sing you off your way, on your way. It's now time for your joys and concerns. I'd remind you that if you're uncomfortable with people who are watching you hear your joys and concerns, either just light a candle silently or don't overshare. But do be aware that this is live streamed, and just like you don't know everybody in this room when you share here, you may not know everybody out there that might be listening. So just keep that in mind.
My name's Anton. Maybe a concern for children and families in Palestine and some of the suffering they're enduring. So I'd just like to think that there's going to be a positive outcome to this sort of carry on. And yeah, that's my hopeful concern for you.
Hi, I'm Claudia, and this is a joy. I want to say how much I enjoyed last night. I had to come home early. I wasn't feeling 100%, but I really enjoyed it. So thanks to everybody who helped organise and bring food. It was just really fun.
My name is Paul. This is a joy and a concern. The joy is what the candle lit. Like, thank you to the management committee for buying me all this nice new equipment to play with. So that's a joy. And the concern is, well, it's not quite working right, but hopefully that concern will diminish over time and the joy will increase.
Elena, my name is Shireen. This candle is my dear brother David. Many of you know he has been very ill over the Thursday morning, and I was so pleased that I could spend 8 of the last 10 days of his life with him. Tomorrow I'm going down to Tauranga to be with his wife, Elaine, my family, and David's friends for his cremation. David was good and a very modest man. This is my particular David.
I like this candle with the joy of how life doesn't always go as planned, you know? And learning how to, as Aline does all the time, go through life improvising. So I give you thanks for your patience as we do that. And I like this candle for all those joys and concerns in our hearts, minds, but unspoken. I now invite you to stand to sing our Koha hymn. Okay, it's time for my second lightning round trivia. What was Polonius's role in King Claudius's court? Now, this will show whether you listened carefully to Paul. No? Yes?
He was an advisor to Claudius.
He was a chief advisor, yes. What was Claudia's relationship to Hamlet? And
Father-in-law. His father's brother.
stepfather and uncle. Very good. Kind of. Was Polonius, who was Polonius's other child? Shh. I don't answer your questions. Did you hear her answer? Ophelia. What did Hamlet think of Polonius? Well, in the second act, he calls him a tedious old fool. What figure of speech describes Polonius's advice to his son Laertes? Any grammarians here or literary analysts? No? Irony. Irony. Alas, I am no thespian. I've only had a role in one play, Duke Theseus in Midsummer's Night's Dream, when I was 14. Well, I still remember my opening lines. The bard prays that I spare you the pain of proving it, as I puck up his poetry sounding more like an ass. So for me to read one of Shakespeare's most famous speeches would be a crime against literature. Unfortunately, nothing works. So I had chosen a wonderful clip of Polonius' speech being read. So, sorry, Bard, suffer. There, my blessing with thee, and these few precepts in thy memory, see thou character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel. But do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new hatched, unfledged comrade. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear that the opposed may beware of thee. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy, rich nor gaudy. For the apparel oft proclaims the man, and they in France of the best rank and station are of a most select and generous chief in that. Neither a borrower nor lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. What we've just heard is Polonius's collection of proverbs as advice to his son Laertes, who is off to university in Paris. It contains one of Shakespeare's most oft-quoted lines in valedictory speeches, blogs, music, and even films. Ironically, one of those films is Clueless. The line is, to thine own self be true. Third, lightning round. What does to thine own self be true actually mean? A, be yourself. B, don't change who you are. C, follow your own convictions. D, don't lie to yourself. E, all of the above. F, none of the above. G, it depends. I wager that the correct answer is G. It depends to some extent, excuse me. It depends to some extent upon the meaning of self, the meaning of true, and perhaps even the meaning of meaning. When the word is used as a noun, as in the self, it does useful psychological work. What is the self? What is it that you are true to when you are true to yourself? The self usually refers to who a person really is, to an internal reality, a reality that can sometimes remain hidden behind the exterior or visible aspects of a person. The self, like soul, mind, spirit, and nature, refers to someone's essence, to what someone essentially, actually, really is, as opposed to what someone only appears to be. Like self, the word true has several senses. A person can be true as in faithful, in contrast to being disloyal, or a person can be true as in honest, in contrast to being deceitful, and something can be true as opposed to being false. A thing can be actual and real, not imaginary, counterfeit, or only apparent. As such, we can ask, one should be true to oneself as opposed to being what? Disloyal to oneself? Dishonest to oneself? False to oneself? There's also the pragmatic question. How does one go about being true to oneself? And the ethical question, should one be true to oneself? But I want to remain with the question that is both more basic and more difficult. What does to thine own self be true mean? To answer this question, we must consider the greater question. What is the meaning of meaning? What do we mean when we ask, what is the meaning to thine own self be true? Meaning usually relates to the significance or sense of something, and is often understood as intent. Thus, our question can be restated. What was Shakespeare's intent when he wrote to thine own self be true? What was he trying to accomplish? What was his goal? What did he intend to communicate? What did he want us to understand when we heard to thine own self be true? If we understand the meaning as intent, then Shakespeare's Hamlet implies that the self exists only as a rhetorical, philosophical, and psychological construct that we use to make sense of our experiences and actions in the world, not as anything real. Return to the play. When Polonius blusters onto the scene to send Laertes off with a speech made up entirely of proverbs that can be boiled down to some fairly straightforward rules for living. Don't speak your mind, don't act without thinking, don't be too formal with people, don't be too informal either, keep your friends close, keep your friends few, don't fight, but if you do, win. Be a good listener, don't talk too much, listen to others complain, but don't complain yourself, dress nicely, but not too nicely, don't borrow money from others, don't lend money to others, and then there is the famous line, to thine own self be true. Does the subsequent line, thou canst not then be false to any man, help us understand to thine own self be true? When Polonius says not to be false to anyone, is he simply saying don't lie to yourself and then you won't lie to others? Or is Polonius suggesting more ambitiously that if Laertes remains loyal to his internal essence, his self, soul, mind, nature, then the Laertes that others experience will be the real Laertes? What is most interesting to me, anyway, about Polonius's Proverbs is not that they hold some salvific truth that we all ought to adopt. What is most interesting is that Polonius's Proverbs are violated in the very saying of them. His edict to give thy thoughts no tongue is undone in his tonguing of his own thoughts. His injunction, be thou familiar, jars with the schoolmasterly tone he takes with his own son. His command to give few thy voice is violated in giving voice to that command. Ironically, Polonius goes on and on and on in a long-winded speech of more than 20 lines about how Laertes should be measured in his words. This is the same Polonius who later in Hamlet insists that brevity is the soul of wit. It is a case of do as Polonius says, not as he does. But the keynote of Polonius' speech, to thine own self be true, reveals a discrepancy between doing and saying. In speaking his proverbs to Laertes, Polonius is not being true to his own proverbs. It is saying, to thine own self be true, Polonius is being untrue to his own self. The lines Shakespeare assigns to Polonius are not moralistic. Shakespeare is being descriptive, not prescriptive. He is not giving us life lessons. He is representing the way in which life lessons are given. To thine own self be true is not Shakespeare's advice for living. It is his satire of moral entrepreneurs. But I want to suggest that to thine own self be true is more than just a critique of hypocrisy. It is also Shakespeare's indictment of the idea of the self. Consider when Ophelia tells her father that she isn't quite sure what to think about her relationship with Hamlet. Polonius does not tell her to be true to her own self. Instead, he tells her what to think. You do not understand yourself. Think yourself a baby. The self is Polonius's image for the version of his children that he wants to see. Polonius is his children's self. When Polonius speaks to Ophelia and Laertes, the self isn't who they really are, but who he wants them to be. And Laertes and Ophelia, like the rest of us, aren't essentially anything other than the sum of their past actions. From this perspective, the self is something we invent in an attempt to synthesize patterns in our actions, to recognize our ideals, and to stabilize the ethical choices we might face in the future. To be clear, I'm not saying that the self does not exist. I'm saying that from a Shakespearean perspective, selves, along with souls, minds, natures, identities, and essences, exist in a radically different and less impressive way than they usually assumed. The self exists as a function of discourse, as a concept invented by humans, not as a reality that is psychologically, philosophically, theologically, or existentially compelling. Shakespeare's point in the scene with Polonius's proverbial wisdom is not simply that we are inconstant, contradictory, hypocritical, that we humans are, like Polonius, not true to our own selves. Shakespeare's point is that we cannot be true to our own selves because the self understood as one's essence does not exist. We have no selves to be true to. That, paradoxically, is the meaning of "to thine own self be true." If we understand meaning as intent. If we ask the question, as we did at the start, what did Shakespeare want to communicate when he wrote "to thine own self be true," then we must answer that Shakespeare's intent was to display for his audience the simultaneous attractiveness and offensiveness of the concept of the self. It implies our inconstant, disorganized actions by saying that some of them are true and some false to who we really are, and in this simplification, it misrepresents the human being, who is not a container or vessel for some self that sometimes is one, that sometimes one is true to, sometimes not. The notion that there is something inside me that is truly, absolutely, impermeably, really who I am, whether I call it my soul, mind, spirit, essence, identity, or self, is a fiction. One that covers over the fact that what we are is simply the totality of what we do. What we would best do is seek to understand the world, not to fix it or others. Hamlet shows us that when you try to fix a world you don't understand, you and your entire family might die. If we understand the world, we answer Hamlet's question in Act 3, to be or not to be, in the affirmative. There is no other self than our being. There is no other thing to do than to be. Who we are is constantly changing by what we do, by how we respond to life's circumstances. We will be a different person at the end of our being from the person we are at the start. That is undeniably true. That's not advice. It's neither good nor bad. Neither something to pursue nor something to resist. It's just the case. Amen. Let us stand for our closing hymn.
Thank you.
Vivian, Secretary of the Management Committee. This is the last notice to let you know of our AGM next Sunday after morning tea. We are going to have some more food so that you won't have to run off for lunch and feel hungry during the AGM. Just a couple of things. We like to make it short so that we don't bore you. And one of the ways we're doing this is we're going to ask all of the committees to send in their annual reports, and Terry will do a little resume up on the screen. But also through the year, what we want to do now is ask those committees to give us a bit of a resume of what they're doing in more of a regular fashion through the year, 5 minutes now and then, so that we know what they're up to, because there's a lot of people doing some good things behind the scenes. So instead of having a whole, 10 people standing up for 2 hours in an AGM, I think it's going to be more enjoyable and more interesting to have them telling us 5 minutes each through the year. Okay, just if anyone wants to bring a little bit more food next Sunday to share, you're welcome. Proxy forms, the nomination forms, and the last AGM minutes are over there if you need them.
Thank you. I'm David, and I've got the most impossible brief, which is to reenact imagining being Betsy Marshall. I'm not quite sure how to do this. But this is just a reminder, please, for everybody to think about filling in the pledge forms, which we've got copies of out in the foyer here, and of course there's the alternative to do this online. I know it can seem, as a personal point of view, and this is a bit of a chore, but I do see that the management committee and those planning the church need to have that recommitment each year, even if you've done it a year ago, or you might have done it for the last 5 years, you still need to do it again. So thank you.
Okay, just letting you know we'll have a choir practice at about 11:45. I brought a little whistle this time just to give you a quick doot doot doot. Okay, it's not that I'm trying to be a referee, but I just thought it'd be easier than shouting out to everybody. Yeah, I've got a whistle. It might be a bit of a fast today, but we'll give it our best shot, okay?
Anyone else? I'd just like to point out what Clay didn't get time to, which is there is a conversation starter for after the postlude, which is, I understand, life is a bowl of cherries, which is a nice way to end. Frank, thank you.